Hi. Oh my God. Should I sing something?
Oh, is that your water?
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
Is it on? Should I sing something?
Yeah, that's good. So there's 2 microphones that will pass.
Yeah, we'll pass.
And if we have audience Q&A, we need to find someone that will pass around the audience mic, which is one of these.
Yeah, we got it. We got someone.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. All right, let's rock and roll.
No singing.
Why not?
It could be ready.
Yeah.
Well, you can sing your
I'll
own.
sing something. Sure, I can. Great. I'm so happy to be here with you people talking about technology and other things I don't really understand. Okay.
Yeah. Now that's what I'm talking about. And just as you sang that, Daryl walks in the room.
Oh, Daryl, you look so good today. I'm so happy to see your shining face. God. This is what happens when you don't sleep and then you go to one of these things.
I was thinking singing, but I didn't want to show you up more.
Well, Greg introduced me as...
ability to sing flat.
Oh,
Self-taught.
oh, that's wonderful.
Okay. Well, let's get this show on the road. Thank you all for coming out to the Blockchain 3.0 panel. I have a confession to make. So what we were hoping to get Dan Larimer from EOS and Vitalik and Jake Kwan, and you got this motley crew instead.
It'll just have to do.
No, but I mean, it was actually an inspired idea of Kelly Foster. She said, you know what? The people who show up will be the right people, and I want to take that idea as a launching point. I remember there was this moment. I was in Sassoferrato, Italy, in a monastery where a bunch of crazy guitarists got together with Robert Fripp to put together a never before attempted show with 109 guitarists improvising music and improvising movement. And as a part of the preparation for this, we all cooked for each other. We organized all our own meals. We organized the cleaning of the place, and it was a very different setup than the usual guitar-craft courses that Robert was running, because the kitchen teams and the cleanup teams were self-organized. There was no sign-up sheet. There was no person standing there with a chart saying, "Okay, did you remember to go to kitchen prep today?" It was all self-organized. And one of the things that Robert said as we were sort of beginning to explore this, and it was all very spontaneous, as we were beginning to explore this, someone stood up to call for volunteers to go clean up after the first meal. And Robert said, no, the right people will show up. And what occurred to me the moment he said that was, I want to be a right person. So I'm going to show up. And I think that's what Blockchain 3.0 is all about. For me, just personally. It's about this call to be a right person. And all of you and all of us showing up. That's kind of the theme that I'd like to use to kick off this meeting here, this discussion about Blockchain 3.0. And as a part of that, I'd love to sort of move into sort of what that means for RCON Europe. How does RCON Europe show up?
Okay, so the first sense of showing up happened about 40 minutes ago.
Perfect.
In the notary's office, where we signed RCON Europe into existence. I think that deserves a round of applause, because Ella has been instrumental in making that happen. So, one of the things that's occurred to me being here, I mean, it's brilliant being here. And I never thought I'd come to a conference with so many gifted, talented people, not just in technology, but musically and what have you. But one of the things that struck me is, given that RCON Europe is responsible really for identity and expression of wish or sentiment, what struck me is that there's quite a lot of you out there that are already looking at this, already thinking about this. And we've now got the task in RCON Europe to gather the requirements that you all have from the communities from which you come. Because this isn't just about Europe, right? This isn't just about Europe. This is about the world. This is about RCON globally and the impact that we can have. So showing up is a bi-directional thing from RCON Europe's perspective. We're showing up as the RCON Europe guys. We're going to collate those requirements, and we're going to run this thing, identity, and the delivery of identity, and we're going to run this thing for sentiment and the delivery of that sentiment, and we're going to run it like a real startup. There will be no stone left unturned. And I'm going to press people quite heavily, because we don't have a lot of time. Time is not on our side. What we have, I believe, from talking to a lot of people, is an awful lot of goodwill to make it happen. So I'm going to come to people and I'm going to collate that information, but I'm going to be pretty brutal in how I have to kind of sometimes pare it down and run things, and I'll be very honest and transparent about when I have to do that and why. But, I'm trying to hit a deadline. My deadline isn't Greg's deadline. Well, it is Greg's deadline after that conversation in the car, Greg. But it was October for RCON next year. And if you were at the opening session yesterday, I said March next year. And I'm holding on to March. I'm not giving up March. That is just too important, because what I'm hoping will happen from the use of sentiment and identity, along with the production of RCON itself, the core of RCON, and the rollout of that, is I want us to make the biggest splash it's possible to make in this world sometime around Q2 of next year. If you're going to build a community, you think about how the web got started. There was that splash that happened, and then every CIO that I ever came across suddenly was saying, oh, we need a web strategy. They didn't even know what the web was, but every company said, gotta have a web strategy, right? Many of you have nodded at that, so you've all been there and seen that. I'm pretty sure the same is going to happen to blockchain technology. The difference is that RCON actually has the potential to deliver, and the others are kind of, they don't really have the potential to deliver on the scale that we can. So that's kind of how I see it. So turning up is going to be me asking you guys, hopefully you guys not being shy as shrinking violets, not that I've met one here yet, and pinging me and saying, Steve, I have this idea, I think you should look at this. Please do, because my door's open in that regard. We need to do this as a community. My job's just to make sure that we manage that into an outcome that we can then leverage and surf off. Does that give you an idea?
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a little thing I could add.
Please.
Right, so one of the projects I'm working on between RChain and Resonate is a touring and booking service that will help not just musicians, but artists of all different types of disciplines to be able to get on the road and find people around the world who want to see their art. And we were on a call the other day with Greg, and he said, I'm sorry that you guys didn't realize the inhuman amount of work you signed up for, which is great to know now that you're neck deep in it. But no, I do think the sentiment of showing up is extremely important, and the things that we're trying to do, at least over at Resonate, reforming the entire music industry is extraordinarily difficult. When you talk about taxes and visas and rights collection across borders and all that stuff, and then building a new blockchain that scales, on the levels that you've promised your community is extremely hard. Then doing it all remotely. Some of us have been working together for months or years and have just met today or yesterday. So I think all of us showing up in person here is an extension of that promise of showing up. It's not just about doing the work, but also getting to meet one another face to face, which I think renews that promise of doing the inhuman amount of work. So
I realize that I'm remiss in terms of the protocol. So let me begin to enrich and enlarge the notion of showing up. Many of you who showed up this morning for the reprise of the demo got to see Nora Germain. So Nora Germain is working with RCON and Resonate and is an extremely gifted violinist. Steve Ross Talbot here is the chair of RCON Europe. And now, if I could just pass it on, if you can introduce yourselves. Here's Steve Bizzaio. And tell us about showing up.
So I grew up with a software engineer as a dad who told me that I should never be a software engineer.
that's like my dad, who was a musician, and said, Nora, don't be a musician.
But what that meant for me was I grew up doing things with my dad always telling me there's a better way. There's a better way. There's always a better way. And sometimes he was right in the way that he had me do things, and in the other times it meant I was 13, wasn't allowed to use Microsoft Windows, and I was doing book reports in VI. That was unfortunate. But on the other side of things, it meant that I was always looking for the better way, the smarter way, the way to do something better. And then as I went through school, I graduated with a finance degree, I graduated with a master's from Bocconi, and that idea of doing something a better way wasn't in line with working in the corporate world where it wasn't necessarily find a better way, it was maximize profits, maximize profits, maximize profits. And that's a pretty big difference between the two environments that I come from. And so I always was looking for a better way, and it would cause trouble with my bosses, right? So I worked in accounting at one point, and the tech guys wanted help with a thing that we in accounting could help with, and so I approached my boss saying, can we do this for tech? And they said, it doesn't really affect us, so why do we care? And I thought, well, because they're our coworkers. These are our friends and family. If we work together, why would we not want to help them? And so I don't work there anymore. And that's basically the story of most of my jobs, be it with large entities privately, or I used to work for the United States Consulate in Milan. I worked for the United Nations in Rome, and I found it was the same idea of we're supposed to be a diplomatic entity helping the mission in Milan. How can we help these people do better? And I would say something like, we can talk to this guy. No, it doesn't really affect us. What do you mean it doesn't really affect us? Are we not diplomacy? Is that not our job? And so I've always been out of the job because of that. And then one day, I meet Greg at a coffee shop, and I'm convinced he's trying to scam an old guy. Dead convinced. And Greg's opening line is, hey, there's a better way. And I just happened to be at a table with him, and I've been in contact with Greg and that old guy, and I've been working together ever since. And so now I am very much thinking that this is the better way, that we can connect some of the people that need help using technology that is still being developed. So that's my notion of showing up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Heiss. I'm the managing director at Reflective Ventures. Spin it a little bit on you, Greg, on the question, just from the topic of what we're talking about with 3.0. Me looking at the space now, I think we're like at 2.75, I think, if not a little bit less, just because from what I've seen and history sort of taking me through this, it's crazy. It's chaotic. Like everything that's happening is moving so fast and so many directions and so many personalities and so many different beliefs and in the whole crypto space, right? So it's like something I've never seen or experienced before. So I go back to history and try to think like what was happening back in the late 90s. And I know Jonathan's in the room back there. He and I were both at Amazon at the same time, right? And that was a crazy and chaotic, like it was Bezos yelling at us at every day, and we were never going to make it, and it was Amazon.bomb, and who's going to believe in you guys, and you can't do it, and it was personalities running all over the place, and somehow, some way, it sort of succeeded and it made it. Not to compare this to Amazon, but I'm seeing that same trend happen in the space, and you saw it happen with the internet when it started in the late 90s into 2000s. It was like that craziness sort of settled down, and the cream literally rose up to the top, and you ended up with harmony. And that's where I think we're going to end up very quickly, because blockchain, I've always said, sort of works in dog years. Like, it is moving so fast that that's where I think we're going to end up. And it's with a group of people like this that I've seen at this conferences, and when I'm on Discord or I'm on the calls or whatever, I'm talking to all of you guys and all the companies that we're seeing out there. It's really different. It's a different feeling even from back in the 90s. It's when we get through this 2.75, when there's less than 100 ICOs happening every month and 80% of those are collapsing within 120 days of launching. Like, that craziness is going to go away, and it's starting to go away right now. When the market starts to settle in on one price of where crypto should be, and blockchain finally pushes ahead of sort of sorting itself out from crypto. So I can't tell you how many conversations, you guys probably have the same thing, when people try to say, oh yeah, it's all about cryptocurrency. Well, no, it's actually about the technology, and you got to separate the two, and that's really hard for a lot of people to understand. But I think we're winning on that argument, and I think people are starting to see that. So, for me, I'm thinking about where we are right now and where we're going to be, and I think that's going to happen in the next 6 months. Is what I think. We'll be at 3.0 then.
Wow, that's a very good time.
That'd be great. I want to stick around longer than I did at Amazon. I got tired of it real fast, so let's make sure that doesn't happen. I agree with you, Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Nash Foster. I'm the president and CEO of PyroFX. I guess this week we showed up with a test net. But, in all seriousness, I think that is what we've tried to bring to the project is just a sensibility for executing on the software side and just continuously delivering software that it includes new features and improvements and bug fixes. Way back in December of last year, well, actually, I guess it was in November of last year, I asked Meta, I said, I want one Christmas present from you, and that is I want a release. I don't care what it does, but I want you to release something. Right? And she got it done, and we've had a release of something meaningful every 30 to 40 days since last Christmas. And I think if you go and you look at other blockchain projects, that's actually completely unique. I don't think there's another blockchain project out there that releases software on that kind of a cadence, that consistently, that focuses on delivering something that people in the community can put their hands on, can start playing with. A lot of our releases don't work the way that we would want. They don't do everything that we would want them to do, but every single one of them is better than the last one. And so hopefully, if we keep showing up that way, we'll have a blockchain 3.0 in 6 months. It does seem awful short.
Hey, I'm Vlad Zamfir. I've been working on consensus protocols, and I do kind of like design of like protocols and like not so much software implementation. I work on research. And for me, showing up means pointing out all the critical issues that mean that we can't ship. For me, it means trolling and making sure that people are paying attention to the uncomfortable things that are going to make everything just a disaster for everyone. And I try to just like, show up only when absolutely necessary. Because I have to be other places and things are always on fire, and so unless it's on fire, it's hard for me to show up. But since you guys are trying to launch so aggressively, I'm gonna have to show up. I'm gonna have to because otherwise there's gonna be some DOS vulnerability. Some single nerd is gonna take down the whole network. or any number of other potential issues. And there's a lot of cases where I'm going to say, oh, look, there's a problem and I don't have a solution yet. And I think that that's also my kind of role where that's what showing up would mean, and for me, which maybe isn't everything you'd hope for, but I've got a lot more on my plate than just our chain, unfortunately. Unfortunately, depending on how you look at it and from whose perspective.
So I'm Ed Eicholt. I've been integral to RChain formation, and I met Greg about 3.5 years ago. Was inspired by the mathematics and how that has a direct reflection on the architecture of RChain, but also really how it pervasively affects the whole philosophy of how RChain is going to be adopted in a decentralized way, about how the network effects really as RChain launches and the apps launch, that this is going to be something phenomenal. I think showing up for me is about reminding myself of the why, and that's a hard question. I'm a kind of a techie guy, so I don't get too hung up in why sometimes. And Greg's talked about, what is RChain about really? Yes, it's about the tech. Yes, it's about the mathematics. But it's about solving problems that the tech today is having trouble finding. It's a coordination technology to solve some bigger problems that the centralized institutions and governments and the traditional way of solving things is having a problem solving. So I'm inspired by that, and sort of that why is what brings me back through, daily through the challenges that the RChain community faces, and as the adoption of blockchain and the adoption of RChain will continue to face. Blockchains in general struggle with governance, and they struggle with regulatory compliance and many other things. And so, RChain won't be any different in that regard. We'll continue to face challenges. But it'll be worth it, and it's worth it because of the why and because of the problems that RChain and our community and our applications can solve. So that's what brings me back.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate that. I think you're beginning to see the diversity that is reflected here, but also there. And the importance for me of that is that the diversity is necessary, right? We're here because every one of us is necessary to pull this off, right? That's a real requirement. That goes to the principle within RChain of radical inclusion. The why of the radical inclusion, and I believe this is very much about blockchain 3.0. Right, the why of radical inclusion is because it turns out we need everybody pulling together. We're not going to make it. Literally, we're not going to have all of the pieces necessary to cross the bridge if we're not all pulling together. And that's what that principle is about. And so, and I would use that as a bridge to flip it around, right? So I'd like to start handing the microphone out. And if you could tell us why you're here in this room right now, why have you shown up, and then turn that around into a question to the panel. Does that make sense as a method and a protocol? Awesome.
The word protocol has lost all meaning to me this week. Completely meaningless word.
Who out there has an I must?
Hey everybody, my name's Fabian Al-Sultani. I'm part of the business development team for RChain. I met Greg back in April as I presented a dream of what a music festival would look like on blockchain. How IP would be attached to video content, to songs, to RFID bands, cashless situations, and Greg said, "This is amazing, this is great, let's do it." But we went through a process and through Reflective Ventures realized that it wasn't the right thing, as a lot of the technologies have not yet been developed to allow for this to happen. So my engagement, my invitation into RChain fuels my I must. It fuels what it is that I wake up in the middle of the night and work through during the day, which is creating solutions for musicians of the future, for ways in which artists and creators are able to own what they create and be able to be paid fairly for their creations. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to dream with you, Greg, and to dream with everybody here in the panel. And if there's anyone in this room that's really into music and wants to help build up that future, come introduce yourself to me. Thank you.
Who's next?
Nobody knows why they're here today. That's what's going on.
Hi everyone, my name is Ela. I'm co-founder of RCON Europe and board member as well. And the must that brought me here today is, I guess, is probably rooted in my work for platform co-ops all over Europe, and the work I've been doing with Supermarkt. That's a community space here in Berlin, where we explore the intersection between digital culture and collaborative economies. So my big hope is to really link up all these activities with our work here at RCON Europe, because all of a sudden I've got the feeling that it's a great moment in history where we can finally apply a real peer-to-peer technology to all these different networks, initiatives, to digital democracy, everything that's going on here, all those many groups of people that really try to change something in the world around us. So that is my big hope, to really fuel these kinds of activism with the technology. And that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Jake, and work for a company called Drone Energy. And about 2 months ago, one of my colleagues suggested, hey, check out RChain, because we were looking at doing validation. And after my first node testing session with Kelly Foster, well, I just began spending more and more time on RChain, learning more and more about it, and really I'm here to explore and learn. This has been really incredible just for the past 2 months, so that's why I'm here.
My name is Jamie Cook, and I am here my must is I must find my voice and help others find theirs. And I think that's a fundamental to RChain and to the blockchain 3.0. And so now I'm going to go back to what you asked, if I may. And I'm going to aim this right at you two, because you're each independent leaders of companies that are part of our ecosystem, and you both bring a lot of entrepreneurial experience into this space. And I know it's tempered by some of this this incredibly flat organization. Some people might call it holacracy or whatever you want to say, but how do you see your must over the next, say, 6 to 12 months from an entrepreneurial perspective? What are the musts that we must do as independent, say, organisms in this whole ecosystem, making blockchain 3.0 as well as RChain, say, 1.0? What do you two?
Well, we obviously have one big one, which is we must deliver a workable blockchain, right? So that's the first one. Thanks. But beyond that, just from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we must find the scalable, repeatable business models that exist in this space, right? And Greg was speaking about what the atmosphere was like in the 90s when the web first came out, and I was 18, 19 years old, learning about the internet for the first time and building systems at University of North Carolina. And it was incredibly exciting, much like blockchain is now. But I can tell you at that point, nobody that I talked to had any real fixed idea that the number one biggest business that the internet would produce is going to be, a search engine and an everything store, right? Like that was, there were all kinds of dreams, and people were putting a wide variety of different concepts out there, and many of them, failed or didn't get off the ground or what have you. And so what we've got to do right now is we must find those businesses so that we can, maintain the platform as a community. We can take it into the future, or we can guarantee that that this won't be a flash in the pan.
It's a great question, Jamie. Gosh, there's a lot of musts. If we put on different hats from an RChain member to managing one of the funds, a part of it. First of all, with RChain, we must figure out how to work as a cooperative and how decentralization certainly works. And I know Ian's in the room, and we've talked a little bit about that. That is not going to be an easy task, and I'm very thankful that somebody like him is going to be sort of powering us through that, because I don't know how it's going to happen without it. So that we must figure out. From a perspective of Reflective, we must keep finding entrepreneurs and really strong DApp developers. Deal flow hasn't been a problem for us. I don't know if that's because we're lucky. I don't know if that's because we've got the right connections. Where it is, it keeps coming. We just need to keep finding those people, and we need to support them. And there's something that we went really fast at Reflective, and I've talked to Greg and some of the people up here about that. We had that mandate of 12, and in 7 months we hit 21 or 3, or I don't even know. I mean, it's crazy how many that we've got, so it's 21. We need to take time to go back to those entrepreneurs and do what we promised we were going to do, and that is to mentor them and to make sure that they can build on the platform, and that includes just about everybody up here and most of you out there. So it's the support of those entrepreneurs and those companies that I personally think is a must for this ecosystem to work, and that means whatever we can do to help them on the technology side, on the staffing side, on the support side, the mentoring, the coaching, whatever it is. Because I said this yesterday on a panel, you guys are all owners. You guys, 80% of every one of those companies is owned by you. And what their return is going to be returned through you. So the success of what we're doing at Reflective isn't just for the 9 of us that are on Reflective. I mean, we're speaking for everybody that's here. And I think that's very important for everybody to know that. And you'll see, I can speak for Reflective. I think we've got 12 or 13 of the companies here. There's a few of them in the room right now. Please introduce yourself, talk to them, figure out what they're doing, figure out a way that you can help them, because I know because I know every one of them personally. I've sat down with every single one of them, and I was one of those guys before. I know what it means to have a coach and to have a mentor. I know what it means to have support and somebody pushing you. And that's one thing that this community's been really, really good about, and that's getting behind something and having each other's back, and that's what we need to do.
Can I have you stand back up again, Jake, just a second? Yeah, sure. This is Jake. This is the first time most of you have seen him before. Yep. That's all. I just need you to stand up for a second. It's also the first time I've ever seen him in my life. But Jake, along with 4 or 5 other people, Enzo and 3 other names that I only recognize on Discord, have been helping with testnet. They've been the testing sessions on Tuesdays. And I come from a background of diplomacy, and that's my study, and so getting a functioning R-node validator has been because of the community. To do what I need to do, I must learn. There's things that I know, but there's a lot that I don't. And I can't send a text message every 2 seconds to Greg. Hey, Greg, how do I set up a network? Hey, Greg, how do I do this? Hey, Greg, I can't do that. And in every other place that I've ever been, I end up with this point of maybe I can Google search it, but this is new. Like, there's some stuff on Google, but there's not enough. And so the fact that I can reach out to the community and say, please help me, and I get almost immediate responses has been incredible. So thank you all for that, because I must learn.
So I want to come back to your question. So we don't know each other, so you don't know that I'm an entrepreneur too. And I've had a number of companies. So, and I've thought a long time about the society we live in. So, and it's interesting, we've got a venture partner here. So my message to you guys, and this is a big challenge, stems from the way in which we count things. And that counting is what we call value. So the way in which, let me give you some bizarre examples. So in the UK, there's a newspaper that's, we call it a tabloid. So it usually has, on page 3, a picture of a woman with no bra on, right? So this is breasts, right? Bizarrely, that contributes positively to the gross domestic product of the UK, right? But a woman breastfeeding contributes negatively. Where's the problem here? The value of one versus the other. A forest that's untouched has no value in the system of national accounts until it is chopped down. So I spoke to this guy. I'll come to the point here. So I spoke to this guy today, Priyam Venkat, right? I think he's one of your ventures. And I'm really interested in other forms of counting. And I think one of the reasons I've shown up is very much to do with there has to be a better way of counting and understanding what is valuable. So for me, with Venkat's venture, which is about smart energy, I want there to be 2 columns. I know for accountants, in accountancy, it's very hard to add another column for some reason or other. Spreadsheets let us do it all the time. But you want to go and talk to your financial controller and ask for a column to be added. Oh, it's like, you've asked for something that you should be crucified for. I want there to be another column, and I want that column to be those other values. So when Venkat sells another set of solar panels with his microcontrollers that deliver power, I don't just want it to be about the money that he's getting, that we count, whether it's coin or otherwise. I want it to be about what he also saved. How many trees did he save from that sale, right? So when you come up with your ideas, and this is very unusual community, and that's partly attributable both to his politics, and I'm here because our politics are very similar. I want us to examine and be very aware, and within our community, come up with those new values and challenge the UN's system of national accounting that dominates the policy making and decision making in the society we live in. So if you want to read something about that, to really understand what it really means to count things, read a book called If Women Counted by Marilyn Waring. Read that book. If there's one book you read that book. I have actually pinged Marilyn, she's in Auckland, and told her about this community. And she's kind of a little excited that maybe we'll come up with some stuff about what we value and how we count things. So as an entrepreneur, don't just think about the dollar value. Think about those other values and share that with this community. And maybe collectively, we can help society to navigate and understand what we should value and what we shouldn't. And don't forget, our chain was all, at the end of the day, our chain started by Greg because Greg wants to save the planet, as do I, and as does everyone else. And the only way we do that is actually by figuring out what are those values and put that in your business model too.
I thought it was two. Oh, sorry.
Hi, everybody. So I feel like I should say my must now, why I'm here. Love what I'm hearing. And the gentleman just speaking now, what I believe you've just been talking about is abundance economy and how we bring our entire economy in line with our ecology. And you've hit the nail on the head. We have to value the things that keep our world healthy as well as the things that provide the material that we utilize and use. And you can't do that without blockchain. You need a blockchain in order to actually have the distributed information in order to run an abundance economy. And on top of that, then you need a few other things such as finding knowledge and wisdom to utilize the resources and then a way of ring fencing all of the problems in order to facilitate the execution of humanity to keep ourselves in balance. And it's one of the first times I've publicly said all of that in one go, because I usually am a little bit nervous about putting it into a single sentence. So thank you all for making me feel like I can actually say the entirety of what it is that I get up in the morning to do, which is work towards bringing us in balance with our global ecology so that we survive generations into the future. So thank you.
There's one over there too. Hi, I'm Jonathan from RCON Co-op, Director of Business Development, and I'm here because I must tell you that I personally have a background in ecological economics and have been involved in practical projects to actually instantiate these sorts of things in practical ways. When we talk about climate change and whatnot, it just seems like this big, intractable, how do we even begin kind of thing. So I'll come back to that in a second. But I'm also here because I must tell you that RChain is now growing in Asia, and anybody here that has any contacts in Asia, which we're defining for this project as Japan down to New Zealand, east to India, please contact RChain Asia, myself or Jocelyn Lee. But I really want to get back to the interaction between ecology and blockchain, and just give you a really concrete example to demonstrate that this is actually practical. So there's this thing called payments for ecosystem services, which people have been trying to do without blockchain technologies. And the basic notion is that there are people that are receiving the benefits of ecosystem services, generally downstream. It's very often having to do with water quality. So cities are generally downstream of rural areas that are upstream that are providing value. So the notion of payments for ecosystem services is that the people that live upstream are generally in rural areas that don't have very many economic opportunities except farming or lumber and such. And these people downstream are counting on those individuals having good stewardship of the forests and the fields and the rivers. So with payments for ecosystem services, the notion is that a line item in every water bill in an urban area would be allocated to going to those communities that are upstream to preserve their ecosystems. The problem is that in most places, there's many intermediaries that can take graft, that can skim, that can prevent those people who should be getting that income from getting it. So I'm hoping to find some projects, payment ecosystem services projects that are troubled by this lack of authoritative, untamperable transaction records, and make the system kind of actually work. So there is a very simple case of where accounting, blockchain, and climate change ecosystem preservation work really, really, really well together. So don't think that it's hopeless. There are little things that can be identified that should be implemented in RChain.
I need to interrupt the process and the protocol for a minute. I must join another meeting now, but this co-op this meeting doesn't need me here. I need Nora and Fabian to join me in the reflective room. But I also trust that you'll find the right moment when the conversation closes, when there's a sense of completion, and it gives you just a little bit more energy to go on to the next thing. And with that,
I work with lots of organisations. My name's Ian. I'm director of H3 Uni. 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, we held a 2-day workshop with 24 people from RChain. How's that now? Is that okay? With 24 people from RChain. That's 48 person days of effort put into understanding what the depth of issues are that we're grappling with here. We've done a diagnostic on that, and often when I'm asked, The question is, who are we accountable to? And I am accountable to a worthwhile future for everybody. If I don't contribute to that every day, I don't want to carry on. It's just as simple as that for me. And what I think RChain is about, and what I must help with, is RChain becoming the exemplar of how to handle complexity in a decentralized manner that is transmittable and transmutable into the world so that the world can do that. Because the centralized manner that we have around us right now has resulted in the crap we have in the world. And enabling that to change is what it's all about. I will continue to point. I'll point and point to the decentralized word, I should say, and say, how are we going to do that? Because right now, we don't really know how to do it, but I have absolute confidence that the combined intellect and heart of this organization can do that. So that's what I must do. That's why I show up. Woo.
Thank you.
Any takers?
Yeah. So, I'm John Weesey from Wambai, and we are building a monetization system. And why are we doing that? We're building a monetization system where lots of stakeholders are valued in the transaction. Let's take the music industry. Music industry, there's an artist, but usually right now, the artist is commoditized because there's only a few people, setting the price for the artist. What about those who built the art, promoted it, influenced it, basically the post-edit, all the people in the transaction? We can apply this technology to lots of industries that we've been talking about just recently. How do you build a generalized system where now instead of the big one corporate, person or company that sets the price on value, so we look at all the stakeholders in the value chain and then be able to sort of let the marketplace place a value on that, what that service is. Even if you build content and a lot of people like it, you should be valued. If you influence additional sales, you should be valued in that chain, not just the creators. So and the reason we stepping back a little bit, we didn't see anybody doing this. And so we're sort of inspired by people like Gary Vee, who are looking at new ways of social media and how it attributes value to influencers and attention people. And it can be applied to pretty much music or any content you can think of, or even systems that we were talking about on the ecosystem. How do you value the players who contribute and make everybody feel like it's their project? Sort of a social way to do that, but on the blockchain. So the reason I'm here is because I love the community and sort of totally bought in because you're great people, okay? It's not like, hey, I don't like that guy or this guy. It's like, let's work together and make something great. So it's really a beautiful collaboration that I haven't seen a lot of places. So thank you.
Actually, can I respond to that? Can we talk after? Because I'm working in coffee. So that sounds like a very similar thing where what we want to do is try and get more money back further in the chain rather than getting it on futures markets where they make a ton of money but no one goes to farmers. So. Perfect.
Most people, listening to this YouTube and in the room understand blockchain, but you all have friends and family that don't. And so one of the key things that I always introduce blockchain is, why is blockchain so interesting, especially public blockchains? And it's really about the ability to disintermediate actors, parties, companies that are taking a cut, providing value that can be better automated, and that where the trust in the protocol is strong enough to replace that intermediary or to make them more efficient, more accountable. And so this is certainly true in many marketplaces, such as music. And we're seeing this happen even without blockchain, right? Not so much in music that I'm aware of yet, but Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, and other ways that are becoming more peer-to-peer. Well, blockchain takes it, all the way, where it can truly be producer to consumer. So I like what Greg Meredith said during the immersion introduction the other day, where music is a type of supply chain. And so the provenance of that creative work to the consumer. So it's about supply chain and it's about marketplaces, and those patterns will be disrupted across many industries, and it's very exciting. And it has a lot of challenges too. But so I think there's going to be a lot of exciting change in the music industry as just one of many. And so companies such as Immersion and Resonate are going to make that happen.
My name is Nikolai Pakulin. I'm from PEX Data Tech. Actually, I'm a competitor to you. We are building another blockchain platform. We have a lot in common. We have a lot in difference. But here I'm mostly to raise another question. I'm very much impressed by you talking about values, about telling your family what blockchain is, about the freedom, about the independence, about peer-to-peer communication, peer-to-peer contacts. But my background is from testing. And I know that most of problems appear on strange ways that are not, that were not considered at the beginning. So the internet started as the open space for everyone. And now we have firewalls, DOS attacks, we have lots of misbehaving, we have lots of fraud. And what I would like to share with everyone, so we might be competing in the technology side, but what we must do have in common is the values and the ways to prevent appearing fraud and misbehaving in blockchains, since it is peer-to-peer. I didn't realize why booking takes 10% from every sale until I had a conflict with a hotel. And the way they resolved it very quickly, efficiently, and convenient to me was only after that I realized what it means when you have an intermediary and this intermediary is responsible. Yes, you might tell that someone is irresponsible and they're just taking money. But anyway, the way to resolve conflicts, to do arbitration, to enforce policies, this is the next step. The technology is more or less solid, maybe as an idea. So everything I heard yesterday has much in common with what we do. But the next step, what is next? When we come to people, and actually, maybe I am too skeptic, but people is synonym to cheating in some sense. And how to work with this, how to enforce policies, how to push values, that's the next big question of deploying public blockchains in the public space.
Thankfully, there are apps where we don't need to have oracles or dispute resolution, but there's a relatively small number of apps. But like that's kind of where we start, right? We start with apps where we don't need dispute resolution or oracles, like for example, downloading files, or there are even better examples where it's very programmatically verifiable what you've done. But dispute resolution in Oracle systems is a huge problem, I don't think. I think actually the solutions are probably going to proliferate on all the blockchains, right? Once there become trusted Oracle services, they have an incentive to provide that information wherever there's demand for it. So I think that, if there are services that provide dispute resolution that become trusted and legitimate in the decentralization space, which hasn't really happened yet, but if it does happen, then I don't really see why they would be platform specific.
At least music is a very nice example of such a problem of oracles. How to distinguish the true artwork from stolen, from maybe a little change, and then reselling it as a new artwork. So music is a very nice example of complexities that still require human intervention.
Cool, so I think we've only got a couple minutes left. Do you want to cap it off?
Yeah, so this goes back to the early days of the web, right? So when Tim Berners-Lee came up with the idea, there were 6 projects on the go in worldwide. Tim's was the one that made it. And during those early years, Tim's view was he wanted this thing called the semantic web, but he compromised, which is why the web is like it is. One of the things he wanted in the semantic web was a strong notion of provenance, right? So provenance is used in so many ways. It's used to help resolve disputes because you can see the provenance of something. But it's equally used to understand what is fake news versus what is not fake news. And it drives everything in the web. What we have is a web of mistrust, not a web of trust. So I think one of the reasons I've shown up is I can see very clearly that this blockchain 3 revolution that we're involved in, you're involved in from your project, it has the possibility to deliver that notion of provenance potentially to the web as it exists now over time. If we just did that right now, that would be great because Donald Trump wouldn't be in office and various other things wouldn't happen too. We wouldn't be Brexiting from the UK. There would be some truth in things. But for me, when Greg talks about blockchain 3.0, and I do remember talking to him about 2 weeks ago and saying, oh my God, this is Web 5.0. We're skipping a generation if we do this. We get this right. This is just the beginning of it. But I think that notion of provenance and how we understand provenance and use it, which in effect is a proxy for what we might consider truth. That's a really, really strong notion and one that right now doesn't exist on the web. I always wanted to be able to click on something on the web and see the provenance. Where did this data come from? And backward chain it to whatever they are. If you think of the world of GDPR and compliance, well, that's exactly what they're about. It's precisely what compliance is about. It's understanding the lineage. But not just the lineage, it's the computational process that is also involved in that lineage. Because when it goes from A to B and the values go from X to Y, there's a function that occurred. And knowing that full provenance chain is something I think that the blockchain 3 revolution can definitely provide the web. I just wanted to leave you with that thought. Any closing thoughts from you guys before we all okay? Okay, class dismissed. Thank you for coming.